Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're jumping straight into the hidden, high-stakes mechanics of disaster recovery. I want you to forget the old idea of just grabbing a mop and some old towels when things get wet. Today, we are exploring the rigorous applied science of water damage restoration. We're going to see exactly how the professionals battle back floodwaters and save properties from total ruin.
Picture this scenario. It's 2 a.m., it's freezing outside, and suddenly, bam, a pipe bursts in your home. Now, that's not just a nightmare to wake up to. It's actually a critical operational threshold. The clock doesn't just start ticking here, it races. Your immediate response in those early moments literally dictates the line between a routine, manageable mitigation and a massive, wildly expensive reconstruction project.
You see, water is an incredibly active, spreading threat. Within minutes, literally minutes, it wicks across your floors and climbs right up into porous materials like drywall and insulation. Give it a few hours, and wood begins to aggressively swell while your paint starts peeling off the walls. But the absolute critical threshold hits right at that 24 to 48-hour mark. That is when mold spores start multiplying like crazy. This instantly escalates your property damage into a severe environmental hazard. So the urgency here, it is absolute. So here is our blueprint for survival for today. First, we'll look at the Worthington water threat. Second, classifying the contamination. Third, we'll dive into the science of drying. And finally, rebuilding to pre-loss condition. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Worthington water threat. It really is a perfect storm.
To truly understand water damage, you have to look at the local conditions. And Worthington sits right square in the middle of a perfect storm. We've got Central Ohio's brutal freeze-thaw cycles that regularly cause exterior and crawl space pipes to burst. Then there's the clay-heavy soil of Franklin County. It expands when it's wet and contracts when it's dry, which literally shifts and cracks home foundations, letting groundwater just seep right in. Add in our aging infrastructure, homes built between the 1950s and 1980s with failing supply lines, and severe spring storms that completely overwhelm aging sump pumps near the Olentangy River corridor. It is a hyper-local recipe for disaster.
Because of these constant compounding threats, the magic number is 60. 60 minutes. That is your critical emergency response window. When a home floods, professional restoration crews aim to be on site, dispatching their truck-mounted extraction equipment within an hour. You absolutely have to stop the water's progression immediately to prevent all that secondary damage we talked about. Every single minute you wait exponentially increases the cost and the complexity of the cleanup. Moving right along to Section 2, classifying the contamination. Let's look at assessing the damage.
Now, before a single fan is even turned on, professional technicians rely on the IICRC. That's the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. These are the absolute gold standard, science-based protocols for assessing and drying water damage. Certified technicians spend hours in classrooms and doing field training, deeply studying material science and drying systems, all to ensure they aren't just pushing a mop around, but actually saving the physical structure of your home.
And not all floods are created equal. The ICRC defines 3 very distinct categories of water. Category 1 is your clean water from supply lines. Category 2 is gray water. This carries mild contamination, usually from appliances or maybe a toilet overflow. And then there's Category 3, which is black water. This is grossly contaminated sewage or exterior floodwaters carrying dangerous bacteria and pathogens. Knowing this category is crucial because it directly dictates the safety protocols, and it tells the crew whether porous materials can actually be saved or if they literally must be torn out and safely disposed of. But it goes beyond just the source of the water. Technicians also have to classify the extent of the absorption. This ranges from Class 1, which is just minimal wicking, all the way up to Class 4. Class 4 requires highly specialized drying for dense, stubborn materials like thick concrete or hardwood floors. Accurately identifying the class right out of the gate dictates the exact arsenal of heavy-duty equipment they're going to need. Which brings us to Section 3, the science of drying. This is the applied structural drying phase. Okay, the core of this mitigation process is psychrometrics. This is the precise manipulation of temperature, humidity, and airflow. Restoration experts actively balance heat and airflow to literally vaporize moisture right out of dense building materials. While they do that, commercial LGR dehumidifiers capture that moisture from the air so it doesn't just settle somewhere else in the house and cause problems there. It is quite literally applied physics happening in your living room. And honestly, this is exactly why trying a DIY cleanup with a couple of garage fans is such a massive gamble. You're essentially just guessing. Hidden moisture stays trapped right behind your baseboards, silently rotting the wood and growing mold. Professional restoration, on the other hand, relies entirely on documented science. These teams use thermal imaging and highly calibrated meters to scientifically prove a structure is dry, completely eliminating the guesswork.
Just take a look at the professional arsenal required for a job like this. We are definitely not talking about your average shop vacs here. We're talking truck-mounted extraction units that can vacuum up thousands of gallons of water in minutes. You've got high-velocity air movers, thermal imaging cameras reading temperature differentials to hunt down invisible water trapped in the ceiling, and penetrating pin moisture meters that technicians literally stab into the drywall to capture precise data. This equipment is industrial, it's aggressive, and it is highly effective. All right, the final stretch. Section 4, rebuilding to pre-loss condition, returning your life to normal.
The entire restoration arc basically boils down to 3 very clear steps. Step 1 is that rapid 60-minute emergency extraction and assessment we talked about. Step 2 is the psychrometric structural drying phase, which usually takes about 3 to 7 days of strict daily monitoring to ensure materials like concrete and wood framing are completely stabilized. And finally, step 3 is the complete reconstruction, replacing the drywall, treating the framing, pointing, and installing shiny new flooring, the whole shebang. Now, here is a piece of information that almost always brings a massive sigh of relief to property owners. Because these professional teams use calibrated meters and strict IICRC protocols, they generate highly detailed daily moisture logs and photographic evidence. Insurance adjusters absolutely require this exact level of documentation to approve claims for sudden, accidental water damage. The restoration company coordinates all of this complex paperwork directly. What that means for you is that, in most cases, the customer only ends up paying their deductible. The science literally pays off by smoothing out the entire insurance claim. So, we've seen the hyperlocal threats, the rigorous applied physics of moisture control, and the industrial tech required to combat it all. Knowing how fast water destroys property, and knowing just how brutal our freeze-thaw cycle can be, is your property truly prepared for 2 a.m.? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you took away some valuable insights today.